Please consider liking and subscribing for more Boston sports content.
I got the Boston Celtics going to the final.
I got them winning without.
It's time to represent your city. Put your hands up. Cali, you know we do it for Boston. Hey, ain't nobody ballin' like Boston. Yeah, hey, can't nobody do it like Boston. Where the legends get made, where the banners get raised, bright lights, big stage. Boston. All the fire we bring in a city full of rings, it's a beautiful thing out in Boston. And you ain't hard like that, you don't put it on the line with your squad like that. That's right, Boston. All we do is win like cigars in the gym, and we at it again. I say, Beantown, what's up? What's up? 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 Feel the energy shift, now we jumping at the gym. Represent, showing out how we ball above the rim. Larry Legend, 86, to the truth in '08. Cement your name with the all-time greats. Tomato 18 in the Raptors. Celtic green, only green that matters. It's about that time. Ain't another city that's louder than mine. Always gonna shine with the game on the line. What you think was gonna happen, man? That's how we do it in Boston. Ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah. Ain't nobody do it like Boston.
All right. You are listening to episode 22 of Dynasty Proud, brought to you by the Boston Sports Entertainment Network. I am Ryan. I'm at 19_loading on Twitter. And also here is Alex, who is at AlexZachary305. Alex, how are you?
Doing well, Ryan. How's it going?
It's going great. The schedule got released just recently for the Celtics regular season. I know you have some thoughts on that. First and foremost, selfishly, I'm a little bit annoyed because I live in Atlanta. The Celtics are only formally scheduled to play the Hawks 3 times, and 2 of those are in Boston. So the only time right now that I'm guaranteed to be able to see them in person is on a Tuesday night in November. So unless they draw them in the NBA Cup or in the playoffs, I'm a lot less likely to get to see the guys in person this year. So that's a little bit annoying, but that's not super important. What are your thoughts on the schedule?
Well, for me, as far as personally seeing them, I mean, I always plan trips up to Boston, but they don't come down here to Miami until the day after the Super Bowl. So I have to start figuring out other trips. I mean, I'll plan one to Boston for sure. They play Charlotte twice, actually, right before they play Atlanta. So the Celtics are hitting all the swing states the first week in November. So maybe one of those, maybe I'll see you in Atlanta. But as far as the schedule, again, selfishly, I would have liked to have seen the Heat on opening night. I know that got released before the full schedule, kind of rub it in their faces a little bit. The Knicks aren't really a rival, but they may become one due to the fact that they've improved and they're on the upswing. So, I mean, that makes sense from a marketing standpoint as well. 2 of the premier NBA franchises, the Knicks are on the come up, and the Celtics get their rings on opening night. So it's nice that, we'll get to do that in the Garden. And then obviously the Christmas game against Philly. So, I mean, there's kind of like 4 teams for those 2 games. It was either going to be Philly, New York, Milwaukee, or Miami for those 2 games, maybe the Lakers, but I mean, I don't have any real complaints about that. As far as the schedule as a whole, definitely a little bit easier going the first few months, which is great considering Porzingis will be out at least through Christmas. Personally, I would keep him out longer, let him, have as much runway as he needs to get back to full strength, because we really aren't worried about the regular season. Yeah, I mean, with how talented our team is, the wins are going to come. We're going to end up somewhere between 50 and 60 most likely. I don't see us winning 64 again. It could happen. The team's just as good. I just think the priority now is going to be managing minutes, just because you've had a lot of guys play extended ball, not just through June for the whole team, but then for, D. White, Tatum, and Drew through the Olympics. So I think managing the minutes will be a big thing. But, I mean, I'm excited. We actually, if you look at the schedule, we have most of our national TV games the second half of the season. So I guess Porzingis really moves the needle for the television. But yeah, I'm excited. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, so I don't know why my mind goes to this place initially versus the way you think, but you were looking at the games that are going to be good. I was looking at kind of the cupcake opponents, and the early part of the season, October and November, they play Washington twice, they play Detroit, they play Charlotte twice, they play Brooklyn twice. Like, there's going to be a really solid chunk of those first couple months where they're not going to need to be, they're going to need to be locked in, but they don't need their team at 100% to be well above 500 going through those first couple months. So that's great. And you mentioned some of the games that you're looking forward to, like the Christmas game and some of the games later on in the season after the All-Star break and all that stuff. The number one game I'm looking forward to has to be that game against Golden State on November 6th in Boston. I think we're all going to be excited for that one. It's like, obviously you've got the Steve Kerr, Tatum Olympics thing. That's number one. And Steve Kerr is going to be public enemy number one in Boston for that week, if not the foreseeable future. But it's also, I mean, it is also a rematch of the 22 finals. Stephen Curry's brand is at an all-time high right now with the general public after what he did in the Olympics. You've still got the Draymond thing, whatever's left of that from, the beef that he had with Boston fans that year in 22 and after that. So, I mean, that's the game I want to see the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the first one you check when the schedule came out, circle it on the calendar, and you're getting it so early too. So yeah, you won't have Porzingis, but conceivably you should have everybody available from both teams at that point. So it'll be interesting to see the reception because granted, when it's a player like Kyrie, you can get on him the whole game. Every time he touches the ball, he's out there. Kerr's standing there, but he's not handling the ball. So, maybe, if the cameramen want to play into it and they show him on the big screen just to draw the crowd in. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there'll be some chance as well, just like there were for Draymond, which is another funny thing since, he became kind of the enemy of that team, but he loves Tatum so much. So that one's kind of weird, even though in the finals he tried to pull his arm out of his socket. But as you were saying, we have a lot of cupcakes early on. Now, the Celtics of 2-3 years ago, those are games they lose because they overlook them. They're like, oh, we have Washington now, but, we have like the Heat or, higher caliber team coming up right after that. But the last year, the Celtics, they followed through with all the steps. They didn't overlook anybody. We'll see what happens with this team now. Because like I said, I don't think the regular season matters as much to them now. And the main thing is, mitigating injuries and risk and managing minutes. But as we're going to get to, there's a lot of motivation with this team that you wouldn't normally have with a defending champion. So I think they're going to take it all seriously. Those are games that for everybody else, it's their Super Bowl. It's their big thing. Washington gets us. Maybe they get us once a year in Washington. That's a game they're going to get up for. We may still kick the shit out of them, but, they're going to at least the problem with teams like that, with Washington, with Brooklyn, with Atlanta, with teams that are young, that, are way inferior talent-wise, is you have to put them away early because the more you let them hang around, they start to get confidence. They start to think they can play with you and they're on your level. Then you have bums out of nowhere just hitting shots, having career nights against you. So come into the game with focus. Don't just be okay, well, we have enough talent, like the Detroit game last year and they're in that long losing streak where we just overlooked them oh, it's Detroit. We can just show up with the Celtics on our jerseys and we're going to win. And all of a sudden you're behind by 19 points at halftime. And then there's the thing you see of the guy with the PlayStation where he sits up in the chair and they take it seriously. It's nice to not even have to go through that. Get to the point where you're up 20 in the first quarter, and then you can just go through the motions after that. And that team doesn't have the talent really to come back. So that's really good for us because, managing the Porzingis injury and the minutes of everybody else to have that type of schedule early on. So you can build up the wins, you can build up the record. Where you look at last year, teams like Milwaukee and Philadelphia, they hung with us earlier in the season because those are the teams they got. We had a much tougher schedule earlier on, and we were still in first place. Once Philadelphia and Milwaukee's schedule started toughening up, then obviously their injuries came and everything like that. But they came back down to earth, where we're getting that right now. So we can build up that record, and then Porzingis comes back, and we can hopefully just catapult from there. So I think the schedule is really beneficial to us. And then if you look at the back-to-backs we have throughout the season, a lot of them are back-to-back in the same city against the same team, and a lot of them are inferior opponents. We have 2 back-to-back in Charlotte. I have to look at a couple of the other ones. I know we have them back-to-back to end the season at home, but it's a very favorable schedule for us, especially since Al isn't going to play the second night of back-to-back. So earlier in the season, we won't have Porzingis or Al in the second night of back-to-backs.
Yeah, and I'm just you mentioned Al. Just kind of the first thing that pops into my head when you even mention him is, I don't know about you, I wasn't really even expecting him to come back. I really thought if he wins a championship, why would you not just hang it up? He's what, almost 40 now? I would be done. I'd be I am out of here. I've made so much money. I don't need to prove anything else. I'm probably a Hall of Famer, 2-time national champion. What else is there to do? But he loves it. So I'm not going to complain. But going back to the schedule, like you said, every team has NBA players. You're not going to go 82-0. There are going to be those off nights where things don't look so hot. You don't hit all your threes. You look terrible. But all you can ask for is for these guys to be as focused and locked in as they can be over the course of the long term of the season, over 82, or I guess possibly 83 games now with the in-season tournament thing, if you get that far, which I kind of hope they don't. But do you think there's any possibility of sort of a championship hangover this year?
I think your natural instinct would be to say yes, but then you look at the specifics going into this team. You have Jaylen Brown, who kind of even despite, the big contract last year, and then the way he played this year, then getting snubbed from All-NBA, getting snubbed from All-Defense, then becoming Eastern Conference Finals MVP, NBA Finals MVP. All that should have been gone, but then he gets left off Team USA. He's not the replacement, and then he kind of gets into a beef with them. Then you have Jason Tatum, who made Team USA, who's coming off a great postseason where he wasn't the MVP of the finals or conference finals, but he led the team in scoring, assists, rebounds that whole time. Like, he finally got over the hump. Should have been the summer of Tatum. And then Steve Kerr, for whatever reason he didn't play him. He was kind of wasting his time out there. So almost you can, thank him for that, because it took away any chance he could get hurt. And on top of that, you added fuel to the fire for Tatum, where someone like that, it's always been judged by the last few years is, can he get a championship? Even though at his age, nobody else is really judged like that, honestly, since LeBron. So you may think, okay, he finally get over that. Now he's not going to be as motivated. I mean, I don't think that's the way Tatum is anyways. But now you add this added factor into our two best players. I think they just want to run for everybody again. And then on top of that, you look at the way the media has been acting the last year, and you think, okay, that's going to be over with. No, they finally got over the hump. The second they lose that first game, no matter if it's opening night, 2 weeks into the season, this is like the headlines are going to be, does this prove that the Celtics are not going to repeat this year? Is their window over when they lose 2 games in January? Like, they come for the Celtics in a way that they don't come for anybody else. And people will reference, well, because they're a champion. Well, they weren't last year, and they still got held to a higher standard. They didn't hold Denver to that same standard. The Sixers haven't been out of the second round since 2001. Or 2000, actually, with the reference check that. But it's been a long time for them. The Knicks haven't won a title in 50 years, but nobody else gets held to the standard the Celtics get. And then when they win in one of the most dominating seasons in NBA history, then it's, revisionist history. Well, this player wasn't hurt. This player wasn't hurt. But we didn't get that benefit of the doubt last year when Tatum got hurt in Game 7, or when Robert Williams and Tatum were hurt during the finals. Like, we never get the benefit of the doubt from the media. So I feel like all of that drives them and fuels them. Like, they've been trying to break up the team, break up the Jays for years, the media, and all it did is drive them to a title and to get better. And I feel like that's going to continue to happen for them.
Yeah, and it is funny how, and I got into this on Twitter this week, like how everybody switched up on their opinion on what the Celtics championship meant. Like, they went from saying, Mavs in 5 and Luke is better than Tatum to, well, they had the easiest run of the championship in the history of the league. Well, it's not that simple. They just were that much better than everybody. I truly believe, and like, I'm going to sound like a complete green teamer and homer saying this, but like, I truly believe they would have beaten every single team in the playoffs. Like, they just were the best team in the league last year. They won like 64 games or whatever it was. Like, they were incredible. They just were really, really good. And that's all it was. And it's, I think, time for people to kind of hang that narrative up that, like, oh, they beat a 5 seed in the finals. Like, yeah, but you all said Luka was better than Tatum. So, like, I don't, whatever. My thought, though, generally on the season is, and I think I mentioned this the last time we talked, the Celtics as a whole are good enough that they should kind of be able to cruise their way through the regular season. They can't completely fall asleep at the wheel. And like I said, they do need to make sure that they don't ever let it get out of hand or slip away. And would it be nice to get the number 1 seed again? Of course. But is it absolutely necessary? No. They're, again, that good. And I know there's the 65-game threshold minimum now for players to qualify for the season-long awards. So Tatum and Brown especially are going to play a lot. It's not as easy to do the old Kawhi Leonard load management strategy, although I kind of now wish that you could. Like, I didn't like that strategy before we had Tatum and Brown, but now I'm thinking it would be nice to be able to give those guys a rest. But I think there are ways around it. Like, I think when it becomes a blowout in either direction, there are going to be nights when the Celtics get blown out. There are going to be nights when they blow somebody else out. You can just get those guys out, get their average minutes on the season down, so they don't completely wear themselves out and exhaust themselves. And that's the way I'd be thinking. That's the way I'd be approaching it, because they have the talent. They just need to approach it more like a marathon than a sprint. That's my thinking.
And with the national TV games, especially having so many of them, with the new rules of like with a national TV game, you can't have more than one player out that was either all NBA or an all-star in the last 3 years. And that's like half the Celtics team. So, I mean, obviously if there's like legitimate injuries, they'll get around that, or I'm sure they'd pay the fine if they had to for that, because they're not going to throw somebody out there that shouldn't be out there. But, at the end of the day, like, I think they have a plan in place to get through this as well, and they will develop one. But just, knowing what the goal is at the end of the line, like being healthy come playoff time, like, yeah, as you said, of course, the number 1 seed would be nice, having home court advantage. But if you look at this past postseason, and actually the past few postseasons, they've been the best team on the road. They didn't lose their first game in the playoffs. Yeah, they didn't lose their first game in the playoffs on the road till game 4 of the finals, where they just kind of mailed it in seemingly most of the games. They go win it at home. But like, I would rather be the 3 seed and have a fully healthy team than the 1 seed win 66 games and, have the whole roster be banged up. Like, you want to, like, look what we did. Everyone's talking about like, oh, everybody else's injuries. We didn't have Porzingis for the majority of the postseason. Like, he makes us to a whole nother level that like nobody else can ascend to. Like, our floor is so high, but like he creates a ceiling that nobody else's ceiling can get to. So I agree. I think we would have beaten anybody. Now, sure, everything's matchups. Like Dallas, seemingly they came out of the West. They're the best team in the West, but I think that's matchups. I don't think they would have beat Denver had they had to play Denver. But Minnesota was a bad matchup for Denver, just like Dallas was a bad matchup for Minnesota, and just like we were a bad matchup for Dallas. But everyone picked Dallas before the series, and then at the end it was like, well, it was a 5 seed. Like, you can't have it both ways. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. OKC is an up and coming team this year, and then if we get them, it's like, well, they weren't ready yet. Like, people will always excuse the Celtics because they just don't like them, but it's not our problem. Just keep winning, and I think we're going to do a lot of that this year and for the next several years, because we're going to have the whole team under contract.
Yeah, and everything you just brought up is stuff that I want to talk about with our next topic, which, and we'll get into. I actually wrote down an example, including OKC, that I'll talk about in a sec. But the other news this week that was kind of a big deal was there was some buzz around the sale of the Celtics. We know that the Grossbeck family is looking to sell their majority stake in the team. And this week it was floated out there that Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, potentially might have interest and might want to get involved. And now I guess that has been walked back, and he has sort of said, or sources close to him have said, he doesn't really have any interest in that. I mean, first, did you have any thoughts on hearing that first when it was announced that Bezos might be interested? And then after that, what did you think when it came out that, he's not, or it sounds like he's not?
Well, I mean, it was big news, and it was exciting because you want someone, especially with all the money they're just doling out right now and like the max extensions, you want someone that has deep pockets. Like, billionaires is not uniform. There's levels to billionaires. For example, like a Steve Ballmer or a Mark Cuban, like someone like that, like that it's not just about making money or making a profit. Like, you want, like, this is almost something that they do for fun. Like if you look at the way Fenway Sports Group treats the Red Sox, it's an investment. It's part of their portfolio. Like, yeah, sure, I'm sure they'd like to win, but like, as long as they're bleeding money out of it, that's all they care about. Like, Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion. So $6 billion to him is nothing. We make tougher life decisions at the grocery store. Like, you're not going to break up the team because, I don't want to pay the luxury tax. And I honestly think he would have built a new arena as well, just out of principle of he doesn't want to have to pay rent to somebody else, which he would have had to the Bruins. And my other thought was, once he gets in here, it'd be nice if he wants to buy the Red Sox too. But my thing is, like, that was one extreme. And the other one is, like, I wanted Fenway Sports Group and John Henry nowhere near the Celtics because, Tatum, Brown, they'd all be dealt out for salary cap savings. So it's going to be probably somebody in the middle. But I would love to have somebody with deep, deep pockets that this is a hobby to, that they're a fan. Or like Steve Peluccia, extending his stake in it. But like, I just don't want someone that's like, okay, I want to do this to make money. And I don't want to lose money on it when the priority for a team like the Celtics, which is an iconic franchise, is to win and is the brand, not just your pockets. What about you?
So with the Bezos thing initially, my gut reaction actually was kind of negative. And I think it's just because of the way that I perceive Bezos as a person. Not like I have anything against him personally. I don't. But he doesn't strike me as a sports fan. Like, I know he was interested in the Commanders ownership at one point in Washington. He just doesn't strike me as somebody who would be involved in sports ownership. Like, I don't know why. He doesn't come across as somebody like that to me. As far as the money goes, yeah, obviously I'd love to have somebody with pockets like that. And you mentioned Steve Ballmer, Mark Cuban. Those are the types of guys I want involved. People who like have obviously the super, super deep pockets that could pay the luxury tax, but also guys like that, it's a passion project for them. It's something they really care about. They want to see the team win. They're also fans, much like Wick is and was for the Celtics. But the Grosbecks are a different story. They're kind of a different model of ownership because, they're not your typical like super, super rich family. They're obviously very wealthy, but they're not on the level of Bezos. They bought the team in 2002 for $360 million. And at the time, that was the highest price that was paid for an NBA team. And I looked this up just because I was curious. Adjusted for inflation to today, as far as I can tell, that's about $630 million compared to what it is now. And they're trying to get $6 billion. So I think they're doing okay. But the other side of that is I'm thankful to them as a family for the way that they've approached owning this team. And I'm a little bit nervous about other investors coming in Bezos, not as much, but you mentioned Fenway Sports Group. Like I get a little bit hesitant about that because I don't want them to be run like that. And I think the good news is it sounds like from everything I've heard, FSG's not really getting involved because it's not, they'd much rather buy low on a team and be able to sell high when they've rebuilt it up. Whereas the Celtics are kind of at the peak of their value right now.
And with Grosbeck staying on as governor for the next 4 years is a big thing as well. Because if they were just trying to get out of this, make their money and go, they wouldn't have signed everybody to max extensions because that makes it less valuable to buy the team. And, wants some continuity with it. So there's like more of a plan in place. And I feel more comfortable because he's staying on.
Yeah. And so with FSG, though, I think it makes more sense for them to get involved in one of the expansion teams if and when that happens with Vegas or Seattle. Like those will be buying low and they can build their own thing. They can build their own arena. They can do all that stuff. Like that will make a lot more sense to me. And I'm going to assume that LeBron will be involved in that because he'll be retired by then too. And I know he's already involved with FSG. So that's going to go, that's going to be crazy to follow once LeBron becomes an NBA owner. That's going to be a crazy time to be a fan. You mentioned though, the contracts for Tatum and Brown, like you said, the good news is you have those guys under contract until 2029. Tatum has a player option for that year. Brown's extension kicks in this year and Tatum's will be next year. The thing that I was going to mention with OKC, if you just look at NBA contracts in general, they're insane to look at. Like if you look at a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he'll be on his current deal until 2027, where he would be making $40 million in that last year. And who knows what kind of deal he's going to sign after that. If he's still a max player, which I'm assuming he will be, that deal is going to blow Tatum and Brown out of the water. So the money in the NBA, if it continues on the trend that it's currently on, Tatum and Brown, their contracts are not going to be an issue, I don't think.
No. And seeing the level of overreaction last summer to Jaylen Brown, like, oh, he's going to be the highest paid player in the league. And they're like, well, even if he is top 15, he should be the best player in the league if he's getting the contract like at this level. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. It's because he was the only one eligible at the time. And I even said, I'm like, by next summer, he's not even going to be top 10. And you look at the contracts that are coming out this summer for guys that are not half as good as him. Like, it's crazy. I'd rather have Jaylen Brown than all the guys that extended this summer. Like, the guys that, like, the rookie max extensions are close to the level of his contract, and these players are not as good. And about SGA, I'm sure he still will be a max player by that. But the way people talk about him, like he's some budding superstar that's 21 years old, and Tatum's like a 30-year-old vet. I'm like, they're 9 months apart, those guys. Like, they talk about him like one's, Tatum's almost like part of the old regime, and then SGA is part of the new regime. Like, they're 1 year apart as far as draft class, 9 months apart as far as age. And SGA, I mean, to him, he's turned himself into a hell of a player. Oklahoma City is on the rise, but look at the accolades that Tatum has, and he has a title now, and he was the best player of that team, regardless of, who got finals MVP. So yeah, SGA has been great, but like, he has to actually have the accolades to go along with it as well. That team is ascending, so maybe he will get to there. And I think they're going to be really good this year and going forward, but eventually they're going to have a lot of decisions to make too. Like, they're starting to hoard draft picks right now. And as Danny Ainge learns, like, eventually you got to like piece them together and go get another piece to add to the team, because otherwise you're gonna be forced to draft all these guys you have nowhere to put.
Yeah, and with Shea, like, his development has been really interesting to watch from a fan perspective. Like, he's almost the polar opposite of Tatum. He starts out with the Clippers. He's a good player, but gets traded to OKC and is sort of a late bloomer in terms of becoming like that superstar level MVP candidate caliber player. Whereas Tatum has been like in the Eastern Conference Finals more times than you could count, has been a starter since he was 19. Like, and they're looked at so differently. Like you said, like, Tatum has been playing. I would love to look back at, I haven't done this, but I would love to look back and compare their numbers from year to year and how they stack up in terms of like just total points per game, all that stuff, and where they've grown. Like, those are interesting comparisons that I like to look at, because like you said, those guys are the same age, but they've got totally different career trajectories.
And the way they're talked about in the media, like, the worst thing that could happen to Tatum was that he had success early on teams that overachieved. So then that became the benchmark for him. So it's like, okay, well, you went to the conference finals, your first year, and like 3 of your first 4, why don't you have a championship? Doesn't matter that he's only 23, 24 years old. Like, you should have a championship by now. And it doesn't really work like that. And it's a level of competition. It's also like the league's gotten better, and it's, luck of injuries as well. Like, things happen. It's hard to win a title, like, you look at Giannis was 26. Steph Curry, I believe, was 28. Michael Jordan was right around the same age. LeBron was right around the same age. Like, stars aren't really winning until they're 27, 28. Tatum did it at 26, and he just turned 26. So he got talked about like he was some 35-year-old journeyman that finally got over the hump. And that's not the case at all. Like another star down in my area. So.
Yeah, well, and Tatum, actually, just before we hopped on the podcast, there was a video going around on Twitter. I think it was from Noah Delzell, who I don't remember what the question was, but Tatum sort of mentioned that, now he feels like he's got this weight off his shoulders because he just won his second Olympic gold medal. He just won an NBA championship, and it's now this sense of relief, and he now can play free. Like, that's almost a little bit scary for me if I'm an opponent, because I'm like, what's he going to look like now when he's not worried about what people are saying about him? Because it seems like he's in a really good space right now.
Yeah, I saw that as well. And those are my thoughts too. Like, you could see, especially when he won the title, just the sense of relief he had. Now, it hasn't stopped people from talking, and I'm sure they continuously will, because it's Tatum. Like, he's the most hated player in the league for absolutely no reason. He doesn't cause problems off the court. He's a team guy. He's not a shot chucker or anything like that. But, people will talk, but he has the chip. He has the accolades. Like, if he's retired tomorrow, he's a champion. He might even be a Hall of Famer. Like, he's bordering on that already at age 26. So the fact that they should have continued sustained success, and now the weight's off all of their backs. No one's questioning Missoula anymore. Is Jaylen Brown a good enough, co-star or number 2 on a championship team? Like, do they have the right role players? Like, everything, there's no questions about anything anymore. So I think they can play more freely now. And like I said, they have the benefit of the doubt. They can just worry about, okay, once we get to the postseason, like, we know we can do it. It's not just like, oh, how the Celtics going to choke this year. Like, we've done it now. We've won the title. So I feel more relief as a fan. Like, I feel like I can watch games. I mean, I'm sure when I'm in the moment watching the games, like, it'll still stress me out because it always does. But now it's just like, if we lose a game in January and they're all talking all their crap in the media shows, like, well, we won the title versus, another year of like, okay, we didn't win it. It's like the doubt starts to creep in. It's like, oh, are we capable of this? Like, is this team going to be capable of it? And they've done it. So they've earned the benefit of the doubt from myself, from our fan base. They should have it nationally. I mean, it seemingly did right after they won the title. But like I said, once it turns to the new year, it's going to be, I feel like, a lot of similar takes from the same people, aka Nick Wright.
Yeah, I mean, I know Tatum gets a lot of shade thrown his way. There's part of me that feels bad for him on a personal level, just because I'm like, I wouldn't want to go through that. How would I handle that? I wouldn't handle it with anywhere near as much grace as he does. There's the other part of me that reminds myself that, coming up pretty soon, he's going to be making $60-70 million a year. I think he's doing all right. But going back to the thing about the sale of the team, whoever buys the team, you just have to hope they're going to be willing to pay the tax. And, for the next few years, they need to be able to pay those guys that kind of money toward the end of those deals. Was there anything else you wanted to hit on before we wrap up today?
No, and just one final thought on that. I think Wick Grossbeck staying on and the rest of the group staying on potentially past the time that Wick leaves is the continuity, and that they're not going to just sell to the highest bidder just to make a profit. Like, they're invested as well in the continued success of the Celtics, and somebody that's going to really buy into the team and be willing to keep the team together and win. Not just like, okay, well, this person offered me, $100 million more than this person, so I'm going to sell it to them, even though, like, I don't know what they want to do with the team. So their continued involvement going forward is a big piece of it, and that makes me feel confident.
Yeah. With Wick, I remember being surprised, like, when all this news came out. I thought it was a little weird. I don't know about you, but when it all came out about his actual stake in the team personally being like less than 2% or something like that, I thought about it with the context of the fact that he's always been the front man for ownership for as long as I've basically been alive. And I'm like, I never really bothered to look into who was actually the majority owner, and like the fact that his father Irv was actually in control. I don't really think that changes anything, though, because I feel like, as Wick has said, like, they run it sort of like a true family business. Yes, Irv's money is the one. Irv is the one with the money, paying the contracts, but Wick is the one running things day to day, and I'm sure like those big contracts had to be discussed with his father, but I don't think that was as big of a deal as some people might have made it out to be initially.
No, it was shocking because you had just seen the Derek White extension. I remember I was just so excited and amped up, and like 5 minutes later, this comes out, and it's like, what? And then, right after that, Tatum signs a max extension. So it's almost to like a lot to wrap your mind around. But like you said, it's not like he's the whole team. It's like Wick Grossback Incorporated. Like, it's a partnership with the group that they're a part of. So he's selling his stake in it. I hope Steve ends up picking it up, but if not him, then an owner that's invested, that, this is something that they want as a hobby that they enjoy. And it's not just in the business of making money and bleeding every dollar you can out of the franchise. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And if Pags wants to stick around and throw enough in, because you're right, it would technically be cheaper for him than anybody else to buy up to a majority stake, because he's already got a stake in the team. So
right.
That's a consideration too. But if it's not him, yeah, I would much prefer to have somebody like Ballmer, like Cuban, somebody who's really, really invested, not just financially, but personally and on a fan level. Like, I want to see that guy sitting courtside and, speaking. And I feel like, going back to the Bezos thing, he strikes me as somebody who would be distant, and I don't want that. So I think that's why my initial my gut reaction to hearing that news was a little bit more on the negative side than some other people. I know he's got the money, but
we get Tom Brady, we get Prez from Barstool, just all the Mark Wahlberg, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, they all pull their money together to buy a stake in the team, because those are real fans.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is when you think about that, we think of those people as like uber wealthy, super famous, the richest of the rich. Like, there are people with so much more money than them. Like, the people who actually have, I can buy an NBA team money, it's not them. And that amazes me, because I have no concept of what it would be like to be that rich. But anyway, I'm glad we got to touch on all this stuff. I know we'll have plenty more on the way soon. I guess, unless there's anything else, feel free to stop me. But this has been another edition of Dynasty Proud, and we are getting excited for the season. And I can't wait to have real NBA regular season news to talk about. It's more than 2 months away right now, but it's going to be great when it gets here. So for Alex, again, he's at AlexZachary305 on Twitter, and I am at 19_loading. And we'll catch y'all next time. Thanks.
Take care.